We're going to be adding a Google Calendar to our web page and having that act responsively. The CSS to make any form of embedded content responsive is essentially the same, but different content will have different aspect ratios, which means you need to set the padding on the bottom value accordingly. So we're going to go ahead and add a calendar to this whale shark page right here. I have a Google Calendar about the phases of the moons that I'm going to add. So if you are on Google and you want to get the code to embed a calendar, you'll go to your calendar, you'll go to the little drop-down menu and you'll click Calendar Settings, and this will take you to the details of that particular calendar, and you can see that I have code right here to embed the calendar, and it's just iframe code. So I'm going to copy that and we'll go into our HTML, and we are going to have this display in the main article after our H2 tag right here. So I'll just paste in the code I got from Google, and you can see that it sets an iframe. The source attribute is going to pull in the address of the particular calendar. There's some embedded styles like border set to 0, width of 800, height of 600, frame border 0, scrolling no. So these are just some basic HTML and inline CSS styles that are being passed on. If we look at our calendar, this is what it looks like. So you can see that by default it's not fitting at all within the area that we have, and if I start to resize my page down, it gets much worse and I have to scroll. Part of the reason is because of those inline and HTML based styles that came with the code that specify the width and the height. So we'll need to override those, and we're actually going to be using a technique that was similar to how we dealt with the iframe video content. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a div that wraps around the iframe, and I'll assign a class of calWrapper. And we'll close the div after the closing iframe. So that by itself is not going to do anything, but it does give us an additional hook that we'll need within our CSS. So we'll just save this, we'll go up into our code, and I have some comments here where I can add the code for the calendar. So for our calendar, we are going to add a rule for calWrapper. And we're going to set the position to relative. The padding on the bottom is going to be set to 75%. And in this particular case, remember, we're using a width and height value of 800 by 600. That gives us an aspect ratio of 4 by 3. So if we divide 4 into 3, we get 75. So that's where that number is coming from. That 75% is based on the aspect ratio of what you want to use right there. I'm going to set the height to 0 just like we did with our video, and that's because the height is being set by the padding on the bottom. And then I'm going to specify that my overflow be set to hidden. Having done this, we'll need to apply some styles to the iframe element as well. So we'll make a new rule for .calWrapper iframe, and here we're going to use a position of absolute. We'll set the left and top values to 0, and our width is going to be specified as 100% as well as the height. So that code is the exact same styling that we applied to the video. If we save our page and check it out in the browser, my calendar isn't loading, so there must be an issue in my code, and I'm just going to quickly look through the CSS. All looks right. Let's look down into our HTML. Oh, I see what happens. The div, when I made the opening div tag, it made a closing div tag that I didn't notice. So let me just delete that and we'll resave the page. And now if we refresh, now our calendar comes in and it's the right width. If we resize our page, you can see that the calendar is going to grow or shrink depending on the width of the page. So now this element acts responsively just like our video did. So essentially it's the exact same technique. You just need to know what the width and height is and figure out what the aspect ratio is, and then based on that number you can do some math and sort out what that padding on the bottom is. Generally the aspect ratio for these things is going to be 4:3 or 16:9. Okay, so now you know how to add in a Google Calendar and have it act responsively.